Awesome. We've made it to the last week of cold immersion. I want to take a few minutes actually to, seems like everyone is actually seated somewhere. If you want to write or just open like a note section on your computer, ask a few questions to everyone that we can just sit with for a second. I think it's nice to actually do both a looking backwards at the past few weeks and a looking forwards for the next few weeks. And then if anyone feels called to share anything that comes up, we'll have space to share after. But I have basically two questions for everyone with this, which is one is cold specific, one is kind of life general, I guess. The first question is basically just how was the last month of cold for you, right? For those who actually in the first week or two wrote down a goal to build up for in terms of just the time or the exposure, the intensity. I mean, did you get there? Was it easy? Did you not get there? Was there stuff that got in the way? So anything around that, and just again the experience generally, and then we'll have a few minutes as well. Just pull that out, and it's like, how did the practice of getting super uncomfortable, going into the cold, going into resistance, translate into anything else in your life? Did other things become easier? Did it seem like life just started giving you more as you started getting uncomfortable with stuff? So those are the two. We'll take just a few minutes, write it down. How was the last month of cold practice, and how did it bleed out into the rest of life? If it did, it's okay if it didn't. And maybe a little bit as well if you want to write on just how do you feel about moving forward with the practice? Like, it's not an obligation that you have to do for the rest of your life. Like, if your answer is like, yeah, this was fun, but I don't think I'm going to do it anymore, that's just as okay as like, oh, wow, I need to make this like a staple in my life. Maybe just coming to terms, sitting with yourself of what you actually want to do with cold exposure as a practice moving forward. So yeah, we'll take a few minutes, write some bullet points, and then we'll see where we get to. Yeah, I'll put the questions in the chat.
Yes.
All right, we'll do like another minute or two on how was this month? How did it show up in your life? And what do you want to do with it moving forward? All right, start wrapping, come back. Um, yeah, I want to make a nod here. I think I really want to try to solidify this practice. So, I mean, if anyone has anything they want to share, any reflections on any of those answers, you can just raise your hand. Um, and yeah, a thing I really want to promote is like if you have a comment that you want to build off of someone shares, just unmute, answer. Like I think bouncing around ideas and bouncing around shares will benefit a lot. Your own experience can actually give a lot to other people. So if you have any comments on what anyone shares, please feel free. It doesn't have to be raise your hand, wait your turn type deal. Um, yeah, I might start. I mean, a few things I want to point to, like we did the personal shares opening up this space, and like, damn, we had some. Everyone has their own life, but there's always a way this stuff comes together. Like getting a dog, a huge career decision transition, even just staying grounded through partial chaos of power outages and home interruptions, to having the difficult conversation that you put off probably far too long, to actually just sitting in your own strength and your capability. Like a lot of really powerful shares already. I think that was one of the biggest ones for me, where it almost makes it, going through the cold in the morning almost makes it more obvious for me the rest of the day, like where resistance or tension is elsewhere. Because I know what it feels like. Like I get that sense, like at the start of my freaking day, it's like, oh, I don't want to do this. Oh, this is gonna be cold. And that little like contraction tension moment, you can start, at least I can start noticing it a lot more in the rest of the day. Like, oh, I really don't want to write that. Oh, I really don't want to do that. And it's like, oh, this is the same thing. And I've learned, or I've shown myself with the cold, it's like, okay, you just got to step into it and you'll be fine. It really like reduces the perceived obstacle of things, I guess might be a way to say it.
Yeah.
That was probably the biggest one for me. Yeah, I mean, cold has been a part of my life before this, and I think it's going to continue to stay a part of it. It's just such a accessible tool for grounding through chaos that it's yeah, I can't let go of it. I think that's where. Did you have a comment on that?
Yeah. Well, I was just gonna add to it and say, yeah, I agree. And the last thing, like the last phrase I wrote, the last phrase I wrote is I feel like it opened the door to like welcome more resistance into my life, but in like a healthy, like stepping up to it way. So yeah, similar to what you were saying about you step in and then it's just like, oh, I've already done something that requires resistance to start my day. Now I'm ready for whatever other stuff is coming my way, I guess. And so I think it made me maybe not opening a door, like an external vortex of it, but maybe just opening myself up to being like, yeah, okay, I can step up to to stuff. And the universe, I mean, like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like the universe responded was like, okay, you want more stuff? Here, take it. Like, you can take it. So it was also kind of like a leveling up of, yeah, now not only can I handle whatever there is that I need to, but also I can handle more. Like I've leveled up a little bit. I can take a little more on, but I can meet it because I'm literally physically doing it to myself in the morning. So it's like it increased, maybe a better way to say it is an increased capacity for handling challenges or facing pre-existing resistance.
Love that.
Jessie Scott has her hand raised.
When I sent the message to the Telegram group that I was going to go take like a fully cold shower because of the power outage, I did not do it. I had like full intentions of it. I was like, this is the perfect moment. Like I have no heat. Like I can just get in. It's meant to be. And I was just like really not feeling it. And there were a few moments this month where I just really was not feeling it. And it's almost like when I had been doing like ending my showers with cold water before this month started. And I feel like when it was something that I was doing just like voluntarily, it was like a no-brainer. It was every shower I would do it. And then as soon as it became a should, because like the rest of the community was doing it and I was like, now I'm supposed to be doing it, there was the resistance where I was like, oh, I don't want to do something that I'm supposed to be doing. And so that was weird, and I wasn't expecting that. But I did progress into taking like cold showers start to finish, but I didn't get like as cold as my original intention was. And I feel like there were a lot of times this month where I just was really like in need of comfort and self-care, and like taking a hot shower is something that I like to do for myself, that makes me feel comfortable and safe. And I was like, I have the choice to either do what I'm supposed to be doing, or I can just like take care of myself right now, which is what I ended up doing a few times. But the times that I did opt to take the cold shower, I did feel good and refreshed afterwards. I just feel like it's not what I need all the time. And so trying to like become more aware of what I need in like each moment and each day is something that I want to work on. And I feel like part of that is just like accepting when it's not actually going to be best for me to do what I'm supposed to be doing, because that's what everyone says.
I just have a thing that kind of bounces off of that a bit. It was just funny to me. When you started doing it with the group, it became a supposed to, whereas for me, before doing this, I had it in my head as I should be doing this. I'm supposed to be doing this for my health, just to make me feel good. And I was doing it almost every day, but then I would like fall off every once in a while. And now doing it with this group, it became no, I've got to do this so I can stick with the team and stick with what everyone else is doing. And it kind of helped me to stay in line with doing it every day.
Yeah, I love that, dude. I feel it. There's a really nice balance between both of those too. Yeah, Darius.
Yeah, it's like bouncing off the bouncing. There's like I felt like if I were to like summarize it, I felt like a big part of it, like the exercise of taking a cold shower consistently was like an exercise in understanding how to feel safe under control. And by under control, that could be myself controlling myself, or it could be the shoulds of something else controlling me. And just kind of like exploring that and having a very safe way to do it. Because like in the shower, it's like, well, I guess I'm just not going to take a cold shower today. Okay, I guess that's it. Like, it's not, there's not really, or at least generally speaking, there's not really any risk, like there's not really a downside to not taking the cold shower that day. At least that's how I was experiencing it. So in that regard, it was really helpful because it was like, you know what, I didn't do it today, but that's okay. And then just like kind of like sitting in that feeling and kind of just becoming more comfortable with feeling that, and not, because I guess like with myself, like I would get very, maybe before, and maybe even a little bit still, I might like beat myself up for not doing it consistently. But the point of it isn't really, to like beat myself up because I didn't do a thing that I thought I was supposed to do. Like that's not the point. So I guess like it was just really helpful. Yeah, and I think like moving forward, I'll probably like continue with it just because I think it is a helpful practice, even if it ends up leading to other things. And I think, yeah, because like my goal is to basically take a full cold shower. And I think now it's more like just to see how consistently I can do it. I guess like that would be my future goal. And then just see where things go from there. So, yeah.
Yeah, and also, I mean, there are a lot of things like this, but it gets you really, I guess, good at or building the muscle of moving away from perfectionism as a requirement. Or it's just like, dude, I'm doing this for myself. Like, goddamn. Particularly if it's something that's going to become, I mean, if it stays only this month, that's great. And if it's something that weaves its way into your life, like you're never going to bat 100%. It's just a ridiculous expectation to have, but it's just, yeah. Why is this important to me? Is this important to me? How do I want to relate to it in that way? And yeah, that the healthy relationship to that probably isn't, I need to do this every single fucking day or I can't do this at all. But it's just, again, like it's just a kind of just a mirror, right? It just shows you like how you're relating to it, how you're thinking about it, how you're showing up, knowing that there's no wrong answer to how you want to show up to it.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to actually say something about too, is that this is something I think I've been playing with since like last year when we read the 4 Agreements in book club. And I don't remember exactly what it was, but something about like the shoulds and have tos and supposed tos in life and how like not helpful they are. Because like Jesse said, almost as soon as something turns into a should or supposed to, yeah, always do your best. Like that's it. As soon as you're doing something because it's a should or supposed to, there's this, for many of us, there's this immediate like resistance, like, no, like, fuck the system. I don't want to do it anymore. Like, no. But again, like, I think that's because doing things for shoulds or supposed tos are not generally helpful or good reasons to do things, because yeah, they're not coming from a sincere place of I want to do this for myself. And so anyway, I just want to share, I guess, on that and relating to the cold showers, like that's something I've been really playing with for the past, like 6 or 7 months of just like, wait, every time I say should, just being like, why is that a should? Do I want to, and can I? And so even with cold showers, I think like everyone has shared, there's definitely different ways to go about it, incorporate it into your life. But I think, yeah, the overarching question is this something I genuinely want to do for myself? And can I do it right now? And is it helpful for me right now? Because yeah, as soon as the should start playing in, it gets into some not so fun territory. Cold shower inner critic. Yeah. I should be doing this perfect. It's like, why? Like who put that shit on you? Like no one. So shoulds are funny.
Yes. I had this experience like 2 days ago, I think, where I started at 5 minutes at the beginning of the month, and then I worked my way up, and eventually I got to 10 minutes. And I would always do the cold, and then I would go do breathing in my room. And then I got to 10 minutes, and then I'm like, okay, now I'm just gonna do the breathing in the pool, and it's gonna save time. It's gonna be awesome. And then I did it like twice. And then one morning I woke up, and like I just really didn't want to get out of bed. And the resistance was just so strong. And then I was like, I don't know, I just like, I don't know if like this is necessary to be pushing through this level of resistance. And I feel like, I don't know, like I've always looked at resistance as something that you just need to like fucking push through. It's like Stephen Pressfield says, like it's the antithesis of like your calling. But I feel like now it's moving into a place of like listening to the resistance a little bit more, and like if you can like harmonize the resistance into what you're doing. So like in this situation, I basically asked it like, what's like a kind of middle way. And I was like, yeah, I'm actually just gonna go into the cold for 5 minutes. I'm not even gonna do breathing today because I've been pushing really hard. I'm just gonna go into the cold for 5 minutes. And that just felt like right in my soul. It just felt like my whole being was in agreement with that. Like that's a good idea. Do that. Because I think that if you're like consistently pushing through a lot of resistance, you're like losing a lot of energy in some way, and that builds up, and that's like kind of what leads to burnout. That's why, like, if when you're really like following alignment and doing what you want to do, it's like all parts of you are on board. You're moving in that direction fully, and you're actually getting more energized. You're not even getting more and more tired. You don't wake up feeling like, like I really don't want to do this, So I think that you get to that place largely by listening to the resistance. I don't know. I haven't figured this out completely because there is also definitely a time and a place for just channeling the warrior spirit and just like, I'm fucking doing this, even if I don't feel like it, and blasting through that little bit of resistance. Because I do think that whenever we do something worth doing, there's going to be a lot of parts of us that try and like pull us back. So I don't know. It's just more fluid and flexible. I don't think it's, just like the resistance, go straight for it. I don't think that's necessarily always the truth. Like maybe for the first few times, but then you want to kind of, there shouldn't be parts of you that are very, very strongly pulling you away from where you want to go. Because if they are, then maybe it's like, well, do I really want to go here? Like maybe there's just a wisdom. Like maybe there's a wisdom to that voice that you need to listen to. Yeah.
And I mean, there's something here, particularly with Jesse sharing the chat of the always do your best. Like you almost have to ask yourself if there's the story you have about the best version of yourself, does that include rest and recovery and comfort? Or is like do you only equate your best as like the hustle culture, fuck your feelings, like suppress all emotion and just go do it? This is like, it's almost a way you can refine that detection in yourself, or it's like, what is my best right now? What is best for me right now? Because the idea that your best is just nonstop go all the time, probably not true.
Yeah.
Like that's probably not true.
Yeah. What's the point if you don't enjoy it? Like I was thinking while Nick was talking, like, yeah, choose your resistance wisely. Like we have finite energy. Not everything needs to be done at the same time. Like, yeah, I think that was a good insight when Nick said, like, if your whole body's saying, yes, I want to go into this resistance, like that's a good sign. But if not all of you's on board, then like, do you really need this resistance in your life? Yeah.
Well, and you can even, I think the cold is this is why, again, I think the cold stuff is just such a nice, accessible piece, because you can also see how quickly the goalpost gets like pushed out. Like at the beginning of this month, the goal was just like, I'm going to get my ass in the cold shower, period. And the second you've done that for like 4 days, you're immediately like, this is no longer acceptable. This is baseline. Like, I got to do more. And it's like, wait, did you even recognize that you just did the thing? Like in the moment, it just gets pushed out like so quickly. So actually just, yeah, there's periods of grace and rest. Yeah, those are rookie numbers. Yeah, it's just like
rookie shit. Let's move on.
But it is. I think it also that also points to what you were saying earlier of like you can also recognize almost how quickly you can increase your capacity. Because after 5 days, you're like, oh yeah, I got this. Like this is normal now. And it's like, wait, like this is something I was resisting for potentially my whole life. Or like the two examples I can also point to is Darius of having the conversation that was put off for a long time. Like that's happened in my life a lot. And again, last week we were talking about like telling the story, and you can tell the story of how bad the cold is going to be and it's going to suck for so much. And oh, this conversation is going to be so hard and they're going to yell at me and I'm going to get upset. And then we're going to be in our rooms. It's going to be all grumpy. And actually the reality is like this took like 2.5 minutes and it all went really well. I had a similar one 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago of writing. I have a newsletter that I haven't written in a while and had this whole story of like, I got to come back and the piece has got to be so good. And I sat down and the piece took like 2 hours to write and it felt really good to get back to it. And it was just like, oh, this was all just resistance and storytelling that just did not need to happen.
Yeah, that negative hype.
Negative hype. That's actually a good term.
Which I hope and think will come up with moving forward as well and some other topics.
Totally. So I want to hook this. I want to build a bridge to see if anyone has like comments, ideas, or just any feelings around. So next week we're going to kick off shame and social anxiety, which is, I mean, you could say it's like the emotional version of the physical practice of cold. I think social anxiety is almost always rooted in a level of resistance. Oh, I don't want to be myself. Oh, I can't share this. Oh, it's the same hype. Like, negative hype. It's the same like contracted tension feeling of right before you get in the cold. I don't know if I have much more of a prompt than that other than, I'm curious if anyone has thoughts around leaning into the resistance of social anxiety or shame. Shame is like the personal version of this too. It's just basically a negative story. I'm going to pause there and see if anyone wants to chime in.
Yeah, so something that I've been practicing recently that is like a very quick way to bring up all of your shame, social anxiety related blockages is to just like say something like as soon as it comes into your head, like even if it's over the phone, like on Telegram or something, like when you read something, like that initial response that you get, unless it's like highly emotional, if someone really pisses you off, you don't need to be like, fuck you. It doesn't need to be like that. But you know what I mean? Just like responding from that more intuitive, spontaneous, basically just being spontaneous. And that's harder. It's easier said than done. It's like the voice in my experience that stops me from being spontaneous is so like under the radar. It's so automatic and it sounds so like reasonable. Like someone will say some, or it's like, especially over the phone, because then you actually have that time to sit with it. But it's like, even actually going away from like the social anxiety a little bit, even when I like think about what I want to eat, usually you find actually the answer is immediately there. Like if I just literally like have the thought, what do I want to eat? It's like, sushi's there, but then all of these reasons come up of like, no, but like this and this. And sometimes it's reasonable, it's like too expensive. But I find that voice is usually, it really is, it knows far better than this other little voice that like analyzes, why you shouldn't do that. Even when I get changed, I like, when I'm getting dressed, it's like, I'm telling you, a part of me like knows most of the time what I want to wear, but then I'm like, no, but then like, well, I don't know about this. So it's like, and it's much more powerful living from this place of flow because it's interesting. It's the same experience as like when you're speaking and you don't know what you're going to say next. That's usually when you say like the dopest shit, you don't actually. So when you're living from that place of like just doing shit, and just because literally there's like this kind of inner voice that's like telling you what to do and you're just following it and like epic shit starts happening. It's cool to live from that place, but it will very quickly like bring up all of the things that are in you that stop you from doing that. And then you can look at them and you can sit with them. Yeah, so that's what I've been doing, and it's been really powerful.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked about this before, Nick, but that's almost one of the most fundamental questions I think people can investigate in themselves, which is, do you trust your instinct?
Yeah.
Or do you trust you trust yourself enough to act spontaneously? Because I mean, at the risk of going into like cultural religious nonsense, I think you're often told not to trust your instinct because it's basic animal impulses. It's not going to take you anywhere. It's just going to be short-term pleasure, blah, blah, blah. But again, I think actually your life becomes there's a lot of power in instinct. That might be the way to say it. And it's actually just a level of trusting that. And once that trust is established, like you don't question it, damn, yeah, you can come up with what to do next. You can come up with what to say next. Or maybe said differently is you don't have to figure out what to say next. You just say it. Like, it's just like, oh yeah, of course. But actually, you might notice, I think for many of us, that's probably one of the strongest areas of resistance possible. No, I can't trust myself. No, I have to figure out, I have to plan every step. I have to know what I'm going to say next. I have to know how this is going to go.
It has to be hard and require effort.
Yeah, it has to be really challenging. I mean, that has always been the main block for me with social or interpersonal interactions of like, this is too weird. They're not going to like this. This is too direct of a question. I can't say that. And again, it's just all storytelling, all just negative hype cycles, instead of just like, well, this is coming up inside of me. Maybe it's actually doing that for a good reason. Like, let's see where that goes. Yeah, I think it'll become more obvious as we actually go through the next weeks. But yeah, the link between overcoming resistance and dealing with shame and social anxiety, I think is very tight. Yeah. Like, they are very, very directly related. Shame is basically the storytelling part of it, and social anxiety is basically the resisting tension part of it. And if you can just make a practice of like, I'm just going to go there and we're going to see what happens, because whatever happens, I'm going to be fine. Like, everything's going to be fine. Let's see where it goes. And again, I think you start accumulating the evidence to yourself of like, oh, this was fine. Oh, I can say how I feel and it was fine. Oh, wow. Okay. Oh, I can actually go and do this. Oh, great. I can have a conversation with someone. Great. And you just build that evidence in your body where you don't need to micromanage your entire existence.
Yeah. I have two quick comments to go off after that. One, I kind of wish we were reading this in book club now, because damn, it goes right along social anxiety. But there's this book I'm reading on the side, or I started a couple of weeks ago, called The Courage to be Disliked. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but it's really great and highly recommend to accompany this, because everything, at least that's coming up so far in conversation, I'm like, oh my God, I just read about that like 2 days ago. And it's like you just said, the training yourself to trust yourself enough where it's like, no, first of all, what I think is okay, what my intuition tells me is okay. And B, it's okay if not everybody likes me. Oh my God, like it's okay. Like, it's more important to just be true to yourself. Easier said than done. But yeah, I don't know. That's just wanted to throw that out there, because that book is, social anxiety is something that it used to be like crippling to me when I was a teenager. That's it.
No way.
No fucking way. Love those synchronicity gems. Nothing, just, this is a huge topic that I feel like I've experienced a lot, come a long ways. And now it's like, oh, there's still more to work on with being true to yourself. So I'm super excited for this topic personally. And then I wanted to ask, I guess, a more specific question, if anyone wants to answer it, which is, how exactly do you experience social anxiety? What situations? How does it feel? What things? I would be interested to know, like, what that looks like for everyone.
I just wanted to add one more thing to what we were saying, or what I was saying about the spontaneity thing. I feel like it's not just about putting yourself out there and being spontaneous, because what is going to happen is you are going to trigger people, and people are going to not like you, you know, and it's easy to talk about that. But when you actually receive that energy of someone like not liking you, it actually hurts, you know, and if they disagree with you, or they make you feel stupid, like it actually doesn't feel good. And it'll often push you on those deep insecurities that cause you to put up those protective mechanisms in the first place. So like, it's going to be hard. And I think a very important part of the process is to hold the space for yourself. Like literally, if you notice, like something happened to me the other day, I won't go into it, but yeah, something happened and it triggered like a lot of shame. And afterwards I went and I sat in my car for like 25 minutes, just like feeling my feelings, and then literally speaking to myself, like calming myself down, and then sending a voice note to someone that I love about it and resolving that situation. Not just like being spontaneous, like getting poked and then being like, oh, and like going to the next door, like, oh, it's like, you know, you've got to hold that nice, warm, safe space for yourself so that your inner self knows like it's safe. Even if I get hurt, we'll be okay. You know, so that just feels like an important part of the process.
Kind of going off what Nick said initially, I find that I have been able to overcome a lot of the social anxiety that I used to have by just like, if I feel the impulse to say something or do something or like send a certain text message, and I hear that voice that's like, oh, maybe you shouldn't say that. Oh, maybe you shouldn't do that. And I'm just like, what's the worst that could happen? I'm like, just say it. And more often than not, it doesn't end up being like as big of a deal as I made it out to be in my head. But to answer Chloe's question, I feel like I usually face like social anxiety when I'm around people that are not necessarily like my friends, but like friends of people that I know, and I don't necessarily have like things in common with them that I'm aware of. And I'm kind of like, oh, like they're friends for this reason. And then I make up this like story in my mind of that's their entire personality of like what they have in common with the person that I know. And then I'm like, well, I don't know anything about that. Like cars, my boyfriend's super into cars. Anytime I meet his friends, I'm like, they're car guys. I know nothing about cars. We're not going to have anything in common. And I just kind of like shrink into myself, and I don't know how to like interact with them because I don't know what else they like to talk about. And then I'm like, well, they're not going to care about anything I have to say because it doesn't have anything to do with cars.
I'm gonna hop on this. I actually had a really cool experience the other day. I saw one of my college teachers like a couple weeks ago, and one of the things that gets me through like the social anxiety of having a conversation, especially with like people that I say that I have nothing in common, or like I see like have like more knowledge or more experience, is just like practicing deep listening. Just like, okay, I'm just gonna stay here and I'm gonna listen to you. What is it that you're saying? Just okay. Oh, and then you kind of like start picking up like the social cues and like the human behavior. It's like, oh, okay, I actually know what you're talking about, and it's okay. Like I'm not gonna get hurt, and I can just communicate my ideas. And I think when you give them that space of deep listening, they're gonna be open for that too. It's like, oh, okay, and that, I don't know. It's just like a communication street that it just goes both way. Unless sometimes happens that you say something kind of like you trigger people, and that has happened to me actually recently with my brother. It's like I said something and he was like, no, this is not how it goes. And I'm like, why? It's like this and that. This and that. Okay. Why? And then he just kept going. I was like, okay, well, I hear you. I don't agree, but I thought that's fine. Like, and the four agreements. Nothing's personal. If they don't like you, it's not because of you. You're perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that. Jesse's point there too is it's also like you often one of the stories you tell is John and I just recorded like literally a social dynamics kind of mini course that we're going to put on Circle. And one of the terms John introduced me to that I think came from therapy is mind reading. And it's basically telling a story of what the other person is thinking. And damn, most people probably unconsciously assume that they are really good at knowing what the fuck is going on in someone else's head. It's like, bro, I can barely figure out what's going on in my own head, let alone what was going on in someone else's head. And yeah, instead of you almost just, I think a really powerful way to approach it is just fact check the story that you're telling. Like, hey, right now, I think that you're feeling X. Is that true? And you just like bring it to the surface, like call it straight out. Or like, hey, I'm feeling super anxious right now. That's kind of strange. Like literally just call it out. And man, it like pops the stuffiness balloon so well. Because you either name the thing that both people are feeling, like, oh yeah, this is kind of weird. Interacting with humans is super strange. Or you just create this, like Isabel said, like this fantastic street that you guys can take a conversational walk down.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, what do you care about? Why is that? It feels like, or you like, I think it also presents some really powerful opportunities. Like if you start, like Isabel said, like if you start watching people's language, like they might be talking about what they do at work, and they might use a really like loaded negative word, like, yeah, it was shit. It's like, do you actually think your work is shit? Because that's the word you just used to describe it. And you can actually start going to some really good places with people where it's like, I didn't even catch that, but yeah, I guess all I do is talk shit about my colleagues. Like, damn, maybe I should look at that. Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. But naming it and mind reading could be big. But actually, again, you're quickly confronted with that feeling, or at least I've often been confronted with like, oh, I can't do that. Like, oh, I'm not going to point that out. Like, that's too much. And again, it's just that level. It's that moment of resistance of like, no, this could actually be something really good. This could take me a really good place. Like, let's go there. But yeah, it's not always, it's often not the path of least resistance. Maybe that's the way to say it. Just like cold showers aren't. They never are.
Bouncing off of that, I find that there's been a few times recently where I heard someone like talking really negatively, and I felt like compelled to be like, oh hey, did you like catch yourself saying that? And then as soon as I say it out loud, I'm like, I feel like such a dick right now. Because like he's very sensitive, like the guy that I've called out. And I'm like, I'm not trying to make you uncomfortable or anything. And I'm not trying to like make you sound like a bad person. I'm just trying to like I know you didn't ask for my help, but I just noticed this. And I'm like, is that crossing a line? You know, if he didn't ask for my help, like, I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, this was a huge thing in my own process, and it's still not totally resolved, but something I actually admire a lot in John. I think he's very good at doing it, which is asking asking a question that seems almost ridiculously basic, right? And at least for me, like, hey, you seem upset. Are you? And it just like catches them off guard, because I think the more you resist saying something really straightforwardly like that, you end up making this maze of words trying to like kind of walk people in that direction, because you're just resistant to actually saying the very clear, very simple statement of like, oh yeah, I feel like shit today. Instead, you go off on this like 10-minute tangent of like, yeah, work is like this, and my relationship's like this, and my house is like this.
Or
It's
continue
like,
building up the story in your head of like, oh, I think they're upset. What could they be upset about? Is it me? Is it this? And then it's like you're creating a whole separate artificial reality about it.
Yeah, and then you've been standing there for 20 minutes not saying this, just very
not
single.
listening to what they're saying.
Yeah.
You're too busy fabricating shit. Yeah.
Yeah, it's huge. And again, I think that whole thing applies internally as well, right? Outside of conversations with other people, like, yeah, you can do it with yourself too. Like, how do I feel? How honest can you be with yourself is a really, actually a non-obvious answer. It was actually really confronting to me for a long time, where it's like, I've probably been bullshitting myself like half my life, man. Like, why can't I even be honest with myself? Go back to the trust. It goes back to the discomfort thing.
Any other ways?
Just what came up for me on that was that, yeah, if you're doing that like roundabout thing, like what you are doing is trying not to show yourself, basically. Like that's actually what you're expressing. That's what you're doing in that moment. Whereas if you just say it directly, it like opens the flow, because then what you're doing is you're actually saying what you mean. And that's a completely different experience. If there's two people saying what they mean, or two people like trying to like manipulate the situation so that they don't come across in this way. It's like one is like real and alive, and the other one is like kind of weird, like, you know, not really making like a lot of sense, but you're like agreeing with, you know what I mean? It's just like doesn't have the force. Yeah, it's making me think of this example. It's like last year or something, where yeah, I was talking to this girl, and I wanted to tell her that she was beautiful. I could tell in my mind, it came up like, tell her she's beautiful. And I was like sitting with her, and I was like, you know, I was kind of like to that voice, and I was like, okay, I'll do it. And I was like sitting there, like telling her, and I was like, yeah, no, it's like, it's been really nice, like being here with you, and just like, and even the way I was speaking was like, yeah, and like not even like saying full words, and just my whole energy was like this. And then she was like, are you trying to, like, I feel like you're trying to say something. And then I was like, yeah, no, I think you're beautiful. And as soon as I said that, the whole conversation just kicked into this like whole deeper level. And she was like, oh my God, like the hearts were open and like everything was flowing, you know, and it was like, that's how to fucking do it. That's how to have a conversation with someone. Well, skipping the first part, preferably.
Adorable.
Yeah, I've started calling this mental chess, where most people, I think, have this like checkmate. That sounds overly negative, but they have a goal that they're working towards. And instead of just like the very clear-cut path, you'll plan your strategy, right? I'm going to do this, then they're going to do this, then I'm going to do this. And you've got like, you're trying to plan like 6 moves ahead in a chaotic game. And I think one of the things that, I don't know, I guess we don't either trust is true, or that we're never told we can actually do, is like, you don't have to fucking play chess, dude. The conversation is not a chess game. Like, just straight up be like, yo, you're fucking beautiful. What do you want to do with that information?
I mean, can I call you out on something?
Oh, dude, I'm awful at it. Like, let's be real. That's probably why I came up with it, because yeah, I do it just as much as anyone else. Like, it has not been an easy process. But I think Nick's point is almost universally true, where it becomes exponentially easier to actually live life, because you're not planning hypotheticals and like multiple hypotheticals. It's just like, here's where I'm at. This is how I feel. I'm going to say it. Okay. Life becomes a lot simpler that way.
A lot better.
But yeah, really, challenging, because yeah, you're basically showing your hand, right? You open yourself up to the possibility of anything, anger, rejection, even stuff going really well, which I think it can be confronting of like, yeah, someone shared it at the beginning of this call, like things have been kind of too good recently. Like I don't know if this is good. Like something's got to be lurking around there. And it's like, well, no, dude, life is allowed to be good and easy for you. That's a story too.
Yeah.
That's a story too. I want to take 5 minutes. I really want to make this a standard of closing off calls. Literally like 2 or 3 minutes for people to write down and I think share out. I think the public sharing would be really good as well. Of like, what is an intention or one thing you want to do the next month? It can be directly related to shame and social anxiety. It can also just be, what the fuck do you want to do in your life in the next month? But like having an intention for the next 4 weeks, what are you going to do? What do you want to work on? Write it out in probably as simple of a sentence as you can muster currently. If it's not completely clear, that's totally cool. But yeah, take a minute or two to do that. We'll go around, share it out, and we'll get cracking on it in the next few weeks. All right, you can start wrapping the final thoughts down. Awesome. Yeah, I think it's always nice to make there's an activating energy to making a public declaration of this stuff. So I think we'll just popcorn it around. I'd actually like to nominate Sarah or Yana. If either one of you want to start.
I'm happy to jump in if needs be. Thank you very much, EB. I'm going to say that in the next month, I want to clarify a career plan and focus my energy to pursue it wholeheartedly. That's what I'd like to do. And I'm happy to pass to Yana. I don't know if Yana, you want to jump on.
Well, I tried to come up with something. My mind went blank and I was like, show up, be mindful, but that just sounds so vague. So I just went back to basics. I'm going to make my bed, drink some water and spend time outside. That's all I can come up with right now. And I'm going to popcorn to Jessie.
After fully committing to spending time with myself yesterday and realizing how fundamentally important that is to me, I am feeling a little bit inspired by someone that I follow on Instagram who posts weekly solo dates. So I think I want to start dating myself. And I'll pop friend to Nick.
So yeah, I wrote this intention specifically for the shame and social anxiety theme next month. I wrote, I want to reconnect to a sense of core confidence when it comes to meeting new people. I want to get to the point where I feel totally comfortable in my own skin on the road. I'm going to be traveling no matter who I'm around, and fully stamp out or let go of the sense that something seriously wrong is about to happen, which sometimes I experience when I feel socially anxious. Yeah, that's it. And I will popcorn to Bailey.
My intention, I guess, is to learn to be more okay with being myself and feeling like I'm watched while being myself, because I struggle with speaking and being who I am when I feel like there's presence around me. And I think it's going to be not necessarily easy, but I'll be put in a good environment to do that. It'll be a challenge, but I am going to after next week, I'm going to be just thrown into a shared accommodation, staying in a room with somebody I've never met before. So it's going to be a big change, and I'm excited for it. I'll popcorn to Darius.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I guess the goal I went with was kind of related to the shame and social anxiety. And I guess what I came to was a mix of, I guess, paying attention to my social anxiety. And when I say that, it's in the frame of this is an exercise I've went through before, but what's maybe like a beginner's mind sense, like how can I recultivate this awareness? And part of that is building self-trust in, I guess, social situations, and just like not feeling, or I don't want to say not feeling, but right. And so to maybe put myself in situations where I might feel uncomfortable. I guess like maybe social situations, which I can't really say ahead of time because I'll know it when it happens because I'll feel uncomfortable. So I'll try to go into it, I guess, and then see how that relates to the monthly program, so to speak. So yeah, so I guess that's pretty much it. And so I'll pass it to Isabel.
Okay, so one of the things that I wrote down that actually who was it that said it? It's like being okay, just saying what I think, which is I think a pretty big thing, and just keep working on my first album. Hey. And I'm gonna pass it to who is it? Who's left? That's it? Chloe. Vamos, Chloe.
Genial. Great. I guess I have two that go hand in hand. One is next month. We're planning, fingers crossed, on opening physical space here for English school / cultural house. Real scary, lots of work, super pumped, super challenging. And so along with that, and also focus more on social anxiety, is I want to be comfortable being more vocal about it and how excited I am about it, instead of feeling like I'm like pushing my business on people and just being like, yeah, I want to talk about this to fucking everyone, like pass out stickers, invite everyone to come in. And that's something that is kind of hard for me because I don't know, it's similar to the advice thing that came up earlier. Like, oh, here's this advice you didn't ask for. Like, oh, here's this amazing thing I'm doing that you didn't ask for, but I want to share it with you anyway. And I don't want to sound like a pyramid scheme or like, I don't know, some business person. So anyway, just kind of reconciling that. I mean, like, I'm not just pushing shit on you or asking you to pay me for stuff. I just really want to share this cool thing I'm doing. So really stepping into that, being more like bold and courageous with just sharing that with people on a personal level, as well as like the whole like kind of school face of just like being more proactive and just speaking up and sharing and making myself as well as like the school and the project more visible, which is something I often hide behind. Kind of like, oh yeah, I built this thing, but you guys have to come over here and find it. Like, it's right here, it's great, but you have to come find it. And instead of that, like building and waiting, like going out and being like, here's this thing. So if that makes sense, that's my intention.
Mine is to write more personal pieces about my life. I have almost always hid behind ideas and flowery language and at the expense of ever talking about myself, because it was never about me, it was about the ideas, bro. And I mean, I think Jesse's heard me say this probably 6 or 7 times already. So yeah, it needs to happen. I don't know exactly how that's going to take shape. I'd like it to be longer, like newsletter essay pieces, but it might start with like Instagram posts. So we'll see how that comes out. That actually leads to my next point here. I mean, all of these are fantastic. I want to kind of resurface how we did this month, right? We started the month with like, yeah, we're going to do cold immersion. Just this like idea, this theme. And we basically asked for those who wanted to commit to it to get a little more particular of what that was going to look like. Like, what are you actually working towards by the end of this? Is it just turning the temperature to cold? Is it going from cold to start to finish? Is it an amount of time in the cold? So I would invite everyone, maybe right after this, maybe sometime this week, to like sit down with the intention you made and actually just ask like, okay, but what does this actually look like? And sometimes the answers to that can seem kind of silly. Like it doesn't have to, but it can feel like if you want to work on talking to people, like sometimes the goal of like, I am going to go talk to 5 random people can seem a little silly, but at least you're grounding it in something that is essentially binary. Like, did you do it? Cold showers are, again, fairly apparent. Like, were you in a shower that was cold? Like, it's fairly straightforward to assess that one. With something like, yeah, being more comfortable with what I say, like, what the fuck does that actually mean? Like, and again, the answer to that, whatever the answer is for you, is totally cool. But I push everyone here to actually ground that in something that they can start with. Like, yeah, I am spontaneously or perhaps out of the flow of conversation going to bring up something that I just found cool. Right? Might seem silly, might seem small, but that's also the point. That's why at the beginning of the cold month, it was like, can you do 30 seconds at the end? Super small, super accessible. The point is that we're building up to it, but it's you'll probably be better served by being able to anchor that stuff in something accessible and tangible.
Mm-hmm.
I think the last point, this is more general, is just, I think it's one of the cool things. I think it's both, depending on where you're coming from, it's both a positive and a challenge at times, which is because these calls are like week by week, like life moves fast and differently for different people. You might have a couple weeks where it's just like, yeah, like fuck this. Like shit is really hard right now and I don't want to do this. Or it's like, wow, things are going fucking amazing and I'm really happy to keep showing up. I think that's just an invitation to both be gentle with yourself and a reminder of you're allowed to show up here however you actually are. You don't have to say good when we ask you how you are. You could say everything is shit right now. I am really stuck. Or equally, because I think a lot of people can be equally resistant to saying like, yo, I'm kicking ass. Like I'm doing fucking fantastic. Like you're also allowed to take up space here too. So just a, invitation or reminder of both of those. Maybe I'm not going to go into much more detail for obvious reasons. Cold immersion wasn't necessarily overly suited for these sessions, right? Like it's something you kind of do by yourself. We're definitely going to have a few like voluntary challenges this month, like go do this out in the real world and come back and report. But there's also going to be a lot more kind of sparring sessions on these calls around shame and social anxiety. So I'm not going to give previews of what those are, but I guess I would just say come prepared to be on the spot a little bit and actually work through some of this stuff. And yeah, Bailey with the last nod. Bailey and Nick have been talking about this. I'm certainly in, although I'm not sure I actually have access to a bath, but I think we're going to coordinate time for a group like Zoom ice bath or deeper cold exposure if anyone wants to come on. So we will,
From the house.
I think probably in Telegram coordinate that. So if anyone wants to join in on the kind of final, like deep plunge into the cold, that is also going to happen for sure. I mean, I think that's it. I think we covered it.
Deep breath all together.
Yeah, sure. Maybe a group collective deep breath to both end this month and start a new one. So you can get super comfy, sit in your chair. Maybe close your eyes. Breathe out. Take a big breath in. Sigh it out. Big breath in. Sigh it out. Maybe you want to put your hand on your heart. Give yourself a hug. Just say, thank you. I love you. We're doing this. Let's keep going. One step at a time, one cold shower a day, one awkward conversation a week. Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, with that, why don't we all unmute, say a big I love you, and we will wrap things up. All
I
right,
love
everyone.
you.
Love you guys.
Love you guys.
Love you guys.
Good to see you. See you next week.
Much love.
Bye-bye.